Conference, yesterday you made the right decision. You voted to ensure that local parties have a genuine choice of their local candidate. And today we face the same question. Do we allow the Parliamentary Labour Party to restrict our choices in future leadership elections, or do we have a genuine debate amongst a diverse range of candidates? Card Vote 19 would raise the nomination threshold for future leadership elections to 20% of all MPs. Now, Conference, while you were all out partying, I was having a good time looking through the leadership election results for the last 40 years. Very few candidates made 20% of MPs. In 1994, neither giants of our movement, John Prescott nor Margaret Beckett, would have made the ballot. In 2010, there would have been no Ed Balls, no Diane Abbott, no King of the North, Andy Burnham. And in 2020, we would have been faced with a very simple choice: Keir Starmer or Keir Starmer. Now, however we voted in that election, can we really say that the debate would have been stronger had we not heard the voices of Emily Thornberry, Rebecca Long-Bailey or Lisa Nandy? And there's something those three names have in common. They're all women. In fact, can you guess how many women have had 20% of MPs in the last 40 years? Just one. And how many black candidates? 0. Our movement is strongest when our best ideas emerge through full debate. If we vote for Card Vote 19, our debate will be paler, maler and staler. Our movement will be weaker. So vote for democracy, vote for debate, vote against Card Vote 19. Thank you, Conference.
I just want to say what a shocking lack of faith the NEC appears to have in the membership of this party. That is the only possible conclusion that can be drawn by this ridiculous raising of the threshold. This cannot be acceptable. The membership of the party is the party. We are the people who are out there campaigning for Labour. We are the people who get the MPs elected. Let's have a look at some of the MPs that we've had in recent times. Chuka Umunna would have had a really significant say in this vote. Mike Gapes would have had a really significant say. Peter Mandelson in days gone by. That's outrageous, absolutely outrageous. Let us give control of the Labour Party to the members of the Labour Party, the people who are on the ground, talking to constituents, not living in ivory towers and in Westminster apartments, but living the difficult lives that so many people have in Britain today. This suggestion that we move up to 20% is a disgrace. If you want the support of the party membership, inspire us. Commit yourself to what you said in 2017, not the nonsense you're coming out with today. I urge you to oppose.
We're getting drawn into bounced into a situation where we're arguing, quite frankly, about rule changes. And most people out there don't understand them. They don't care about them. They're not interested in them. They want to know, what are we doing for them? What are we going to do to make their lives better? They should be like my General Secretary, out there with the workers and defending them on the site. That's what we should be doing, Conference. So I ask you to oppose this.
Thanks. Conference, do we believe that our leadership is really serious about being in government? Do we believe that really think that they're going to build a trust of the electorate with these anti-democratic rule changes? I think not. At the moment, Boris Johnson has caused chaos in the NHS. He's leading a food poverty crisis, cutting universal credit, and has failed to prevent 150,000 COVID deaths and counting. Instead of talking to the country, our leadership is trying to restrict members' choices in leadership elections. Conference, we're debating this today, this watered-down version, because they couldn't get it any further, because the unions told them no last night. Our party stands up in Parliament, attacking the government's attempts to erode democracy, gerrymander constituencies and finding ways to block people from voting. And it is complete hypocrisy that our leadership are attempting to do the same by restricting our party democracy. Conference, this is an out-of-touch leadership who were told we'd be 20 points ahead in the polls by now, who want to dismiss the views of our members and remove any opposition. I want to be here today talking about the challenges facing my constituency of Easerton, the lack of investment, jobs, health, housing and the disgrace of food poverty. Conference, this debate shows this failure of leadership that we have. It damages our party, our democracy, and it fails the people we're here to represent who are in desperate need of Labour government. I urge you to vote against these rule changes. Thank you.
The leadership may have proposed this rule change to limit the ability of the left of our party to lead us into the future, but this is not simply about left versus right. This is about increasing the power of MPs to choose our leader. This is about disrespecting the rights of hundreds of thousands of members and affiliate members who live in the communities that we want to serve. If this rule change had been in place for the last 100 years, 120 years of our party, only one woman would have made it onto the members' ballot for leader and absolutely zero BAME MPs. This is completely unacceptable for a party that claims to care about equalities and is not addressed anyway in the rule change before us today. If this rule change had been in place in 2020, candidates like Lisa Nandy, Rebecca Long-Bailey would not have been on the ballot paper. And as previous delegates have said, it would have been a contest between Keir Starmer and Keir Starmer. We need democratic contest in the Labour Party.
I'm afraid this is going to have to be a final point.
I'm on my last sentence. We need democratic contest in the Labour Party to be the best party we can for our country. So please vote down this rule change. Thank you.
Comrades, it's really quite odd at this time to be talking about a future leadership contest when we have a leader in place. He's not faced with a challenge at the moment, and of course he was someone who was elected by one member, one vote. But the job of any Labour leader is to be able to catch the ear of the nation, and that's an increasingly divided and diverse nation. And I'm afraid that what I have to hope to persuade you not to vote to raise the threshold for those who can get on the ballot to be our leader. A future Labour government must have a majority and a clear mandate to undo the destruction and chaos caused by a Tory government. We are a party of great talent and energy, ideas. We have vision that will change this country. But our Labour leader has got to reflect our country. And as you heard from Delegate before, the last contest we would have had been Sir Keir Starmer versus Sir Keir Starmer. We would have had one woman MP who made the ballot and no people of colour. Now, what is that saying for the party of equality? We are socialists, we are feminists, we are anti-racist, and we fight discrimination wherever we see it. Now, this, of course, I think the speaker at the front said, we're going to have working parties to look at this.
Delegate, I'm going to have to ask you to wind up, please, but please make a final point.
Okay, those are not proposals before us. What are before us is a structure that will exclude women, will exclude people of colour. And I ask you to think about conference yesterday,
Delegate,
Claire.
this is trending into another point, so I'm going to say thank you very much, but please ask that they wind up.
So I know you say don't shout at the person with the mic, but what I'm saying is it's time that some of you handed it over.
I don't think anyone in the country, anyone in the Red Wall, anyone in our current heartlands either for that matter, is looking at the Labour Party and saying, well, if only they became even less democratic in their leadership structures, having already been less democratic than the Tories, the Lib Dems, the SNP, then I might come back to them. It's an internal matter, it's not looking outwards at all. The danger is that if we lose the next election, we might not even be able to adjust to win the one after that, if it makes in a short list of one or two for the next leadership. I spoke in favour, pragmatically, of the change to a looser form of trigger ballots last time. Some people wanted open elections, I in my heart did, but it was a step forward for party democracy. And now we're taking it back as soon, or perhaps sooner, as is constitutionally allowed for membership ones so to do. Likewise, which I never supported, we're going to make the leadership elections even worse. I'm still with Ken Livingstone, one mover, one seconder for a leader candidate. And, I mean, advance by inches is not pragmatic, not when our house is on fire. We have to have an offer for this country, and becoming a less democratic party isn't it. And we have to look at the results. Cheshire and Amersham, less votes than members in a seat where Tony Blair endorsed the candidate personally, which he didn't do in my seat where he happened to have been born. So we're not doing well on the current track.
Thank you, Delegate.
Let's change track.
Thank you, Delegate.
Yeah, Chair, Dave Wald, General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union. To raise, whether you want to call it a point of order or a point in debate, let me be absolutely clear. I want to make a point about the way that this has been presented, because it's being said, and I believe that conference is being misled on this, that these rule changes relating to future leadership elections have been done after consultation with trade unions. And I'm here to say to you that from the CWU's point of view, we have not been consulted, and I don't want it implied that we have been, which is what I believe has been briefed and was stated in the NEC document. Had we been consulted, we would have made the point that we feel that we're being bounced, and even at this late stage, Keir, I think you should reflect on whether or not this needs to come to this particular conference. I'd ask you to think about creating unity in the party, looking outwards and deferring the leadership election changes that you're bringing forward.
I oppose all of the rule changes, but in particular, I want to speak about Card Vote 19. The word democracy has been bandied around a lot throughout this conference. I can't see how increasing the MP nomination threshold from 10% to 20% does anything other than consolidate power into the hands of a few in the PLP. As many of our delegates have already indicated, only one female leadership candidate has met this threshold in the past, and no people of colour. Members would also need to have been a member for 6 months to be eligible to vote. This is bad for our party. It will not help us grow our membership, and it sends the message that we don't trust new members. This is not democracy. This does not make us more electable. Maybe to be electable, we should start with clear policy. We do need to keep in place the structures that encourage diversity and give a voice to all of our members. Please vote against this rule change.
During my time in my local party, I've been privileged to get to know two of our Labour MPs, Martin Linton, MP from 1997 to 2010, and Marsha de Cordova, who won a fantastic victory here in 2017. They're both fantastic people, and they have supported my community in countless struggles over the last few decades, throughout the whole of my life, in fact. But as much as I love them both, I don't think they need any more power than they already have. Even though Westminster is just over the bridge north of Battersea, it might as well be a million miles away. 86% of MPs have a degree. Outside of Westminster, it's less than half of that. An MP's salary starts at £82,000 a year. That's nearly four times the national average. And this matters. On issue after issue, we've seen that MPs don't have a magic hotline to the streets. The world they move in is deeply unrepresentative. It's a world of extremely powerful people, but it is a small world. And doubling the power of MPs, giving them a veto over which candidates can get onto the ballot paper in a future leadership election, gives them a massively disproportionate say in the future of our party. If Labour are to win elections, if Keir is to be elected as a future Prime Minister, then we need a Labour Party which is at its strongest. And that strength doesn't just come from Westminster. It comes from our community, our members, our trade unions, our socialist affiliates, and it comes when we are united across our differences, when all the wings of the party have a voice, when we learn from those we disagree with, instead of trying to limit the amount of democracy that we have. Conference, I'm asking you to come together to protect the democratic rights of members, to cherish all the different parts of our party. The proposals in Card Vote 19 will not help get Labour election ready. They will do the opposite. Please vote against them.
Matt Rack, Fire Brigades Union, opposing. Conference, we will be voting against all the card vote rule changes proposed here. But I want to, in our view, they are undemocratic. They reduce the rights of party members and of affiliates. They seem to privilege MPs. They seem to be for the few rather than for the many. But the idea that this will convince voters is completely untenable and unconvincing. It seems to see our party members and indeed our affiliates as the problem. This party relies on its members and its affiliated organisations. But I want to raise a very serious point in relation to the relationship between the party and its affiliated unions. There are 12 affiliated unions. We meet through TULO. We have been assured that there would be an attempt to seek consensus on these points. Unions have not had the chance to consult through our structures on the proposals in front of us today. There has not, therefore, been any attempt to achieve consensus through TULO, and TULO has, therefore, no position on the rule changes in front of you. And I urge, even at this stage, on that ground alone, that these rule changes should be withdrawn. Otherwise, Conference, I particularly urge you to vote against Card Vote 18 and Card Vote 19. Thank you.
Tell me, how does an increase in the PLP nominations to 20% promote equality and diversity and fairness in our Labour community? The short answer is it doesn't. This amendment proposes the opposite. It would limit shortlists to a maximum of 3 or 2 or even 1. If this rule had been in place in 2020, there would have been, as other delegates have explained, no Lisa Nandy, no Rebecca Long-Bailey, no Clive Lewis up for election. Mr Starmer would have been the only man standing. Democracy? Farcical. Take a knee. Reclaim the streets. How does a selection process that throws up one white man...
Final point, please.
Nearly finished. Leave us as a community. Conference, my Labour community, I invite you to remember who we are, to know where we came from and where we're going.
I'd like to say that I don't find it acceptable that the wording of this motion was only released this morning, despite being under consideration for many months. This is a substantial change to the party constitutional and ought to have been more thoroughly consulted on. I think everyone likes the idea of an independent disciplinary system in principle, free of factionalism. Everyone likes the idea that there's a body of unimpeachable philosopher kings out there who will always take the right decisions. Unfortunately, that's just not how the world works. Decisions can only be taken by people, and people who are in one way or another appointed by other people. Under these proposals, it seems they are to be appointed by the General Secretary or by people or bodies delegated or created by the General Secretary. This is a transfer of power from the National Constitutional Committee, which is elected by conference. It should be
It should be stressed that the decisions that this body will be expected to take will often, or indeed usually, be inherently political in nature. What are the limits of acceptable debate in the Labour Party on a range of sensitive issues? What are the appropriate standards to be expected of the State of Israel? Just this past week, we have seen issues around gender identity erupt again in the party. Recently, a High Court case was decided about abortion on the grounds of disability. Clearly, claims could be made on both sides. Are the scope of the party's positions on these matters to be determined by HR managers? I'm not a fan of a lot of the language that has crept into the rulebook over the recent years, as I think it's overly broad. I think the idea that these decisions should be permanently walled off from democratic control is wholly misconceived. It doesn't even make sense within the context of the HRC report, the findings of which primarily related to involvement of the Leader's Office in the disciplinary decisions.
I'm going to have to ask you to wind up.
Yes, I will be. This motion transfers power from the NCC, which is in principle has nothing to do with the leadership, to the NEC, on which the leader sits, and a body which is entirely the creature of the General Secretary, who is appointed largely under the influence of leadership.
This is going beyond the winding up into a further paragraph.
You can't take the politics out of politics. You can, however, take the democracy out of politics. I suggest this motion should be rejected and the matter is within its third for further
Delegate, I think I've been more...
Many of you will know. Please excuse me if I'm nervous, because it's my first time and first opportunity to speak at conference. I've unfortunately got to state that we have not received in advance any of this information about the rule change. I was hunting today for a copy of the CAC report so we could read it. So it's a very hurried assessment. Maggie Cousins spoke, she was my predecessor, spoke at the last conference of Labour Party, which was 2019. And Maggie, of course, had many years' association with the NCC. And she pointed out that the origins of the NCC were stated from, I think, 1988, when the Labour Party had developed the NCC as an independent body to decide on disciplinary cases. The reason that was because in law there'd been a court case, and it had been pointed out that the NEC was the judge and the jury of all the disciplinary process, and that was held to be unhealthy and unsafe. Hence, we were founded. Now, I'm speaking on behalf of my members, because people don't always give credit that elected committees can be people of tremendous standing and people who have a lot of experience.
Yeah,
we have three lawyers on our committee, for instance. Now, I want to say that this proposal...
Delegate, this will have to be a final point, I'm afraid.
OK, right. This proposal is unsafe because it has a General Secretary controlling all appointments.